everybody, welcome back to the annual Outside the Box Reviews Halloween vlogs. I know I've seen it going around online, the hashtag Halloween is not canceled, and I fully intend to keep this tradition going, even when sometimes I can't remember to do the things I'm actually supposed to do on this channel. But whatever, I do get excited about these videos every year, so I really want to keep things going as close to normal as possible this year. I guess maybe it would be irresponsible to do these without a bit of a disclaimer. I am fully aware of what's going on in the world right now. I understand why a lot of the things that normally happen in Halloween season have been canceled, shut down, all that stuff. Totally understandable. So the things I am going to be doing this year, A is just me assuming a risk to myself type thing, as well as I'm doing a lot more research than normal to try to get an understanding of how to best go about the things I'm doing. Some of the things I'm doing are limited number of people and people I know and trust, and I pretty much feel okay with being around and I'm not too worried. Other situations are ones where I'm specifically going because supposedly at least social distancing is required, masks are required, all that stuff, and I feel like it's safe enough to do these things. But yeah, I don't want to dwell on this too much. I just figured it kind of felt a little necessary to say that up front, just because I feel like I'm gonna get comments if I don't. But the rest of these vlogs are gonna try to be, a bit of escapism. It's been a rough year for everybody, so let's just have some Halloween themed fun and try to enjoy the season the best we can. So since I always have to have some kind of collecting project or two going on at a time in my horror room, I started changing up some of the stuff I have for my Evil Dead display. I kind of just stumbled into this because there were some new items coming out that I wanted, and then it got a little over the top. So before I'd had this NECA Ashy Slashy, which I'm just moving somewhere else, but he's not Evil Dead 2, he's Ash vs. Evil Dead, so he'll just find a new home. And I had previously had the old Trick or Treat Studios Kandarian Dagger, which is all foam, and their old solid foam Necronomicon. So that's what was in the display prior, but basically Trick or Treat Studios came out with this new resin Kandarian Dagger that's much better detailed. It looks really darn good. I think anybody who collects Trick or Treat Studios stuff knows it's a bit hit or miss with tots, but I think they did a pretty darn good job on this dagger. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. They also did this new Necronomicon you can see up here. So this one actually is openable. We've got printed out pages. I did go in and kind of crinkle up the pages a little more. There's some people kind of talking online about trying to reshape these a bit, and I did a little bit of that, but really in the movie you do see the book kind of looking a little thin, which isn't aesthetically pleasing to me, so I kind of tried to split the difference with doing the mod, but it does sit kind of parallel there. So maybe not super movie accurate, but I think it works. I'm going to put him over here for now. But much needed upgrade to that book. Really happy to have it. Another piece from Tots that I think they did a pretty darn good job on. So then I ended up picking up this guy here, which is not a Trick or Treat Studios prop. This is the real deal. So this is a Panasonic RQ706S, I believe is the model number. Reel-to-reel tape recorder. So this is the one that you see in the first two films. Same make and model. Within the film, the reels themselves do change depending on the movie you're watching. In the original Evil Dead, there is one large one and one small one. But since I was kind of going for an Evil Dead 2 theme, since all the other props I have are Evil Dead 2, and I prefer that movie, I went with as close as I could get to the Evil Dead 2 reels. So the one on the left is kind of like a no-name brand, just kind of generic-looking reel with the kind of cross shape in the middle of it, and it's out of a clear plastic. And the one on the right is a Radio Shack brand, frosted plastic. So it's kind of like a grayish color with the 3 spokes on it. So these might not be the exact same reels, but they're the right size and pretty close to the designs you see on film. So I'm pretty happy with this. And to make this even better, this thing is fully functional, or more or less functional, at least let's say. The power cord tucks away in the back. It will actually play. It will record. I'm still trying to figure out the recording. I do want to record some of the audio tracks from the film onto the tape. It's, in theory, relatively easy to do, but I've been having a little issues with one side of the reel lagging when it's recording. so the tape will kind of just end up like spooling out of the bottom a little bit and not feed through like it's supposed to. So I'm still kind of work in progress to get it so I can actually have the real audio on here. But by the time I'm done, you will actually be able to play the incantation from the Book of the Dead out of this thing, and I'm really excited about being able to do that. But we pull this guy out of here just to show it off. You can flip this guy around. So there's the back. You can pull open this thing here, and there's your power cable. Now, I did mess with this the day I got it for quite a while, and it did seem to overheat after a bit, so I gotta be careful with it and not try to overexert this thing. But turn around to the other side, there's the connectors down there where you can put the line in, and that's how I can actually record the audio on it. It's a bit of a heavy piece, but I don't know, to me it's just really cool to have this thing that's pretty close to what was on the screen from the film, and it's real and it works and it does all that cool stuff. It's kind of funny because this thing is definitely old and dirty, and the TOTS props are a little too clean looking by comparison, so eventually I'll probably have to go ahead and kind of dirty them up a little more just so that they fit in with this thing. So I debated if this would really count for a Halloween style vlog thing, but I vlogged something similar earlier in the year, so why the hell not? I'm heading down to Orlando today to get another horror tattoo from my buddy Rob Slasher. I think today actually we're doing a couple. I think we're gonna do Texas Chainsaw 2 Leatherface and a Leslie Vernon one, and maybe something else small. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but yeah, it should be fun, I think. So I pretty much just got home from getting tattooed, and my arm is still wrapped up like a goddamn sausage here. But I figured I'd film this quick little bit because, you know, I feel like a mummy right now, which is Halloween related, so it ties a little further into the vlog. But yeah, I ended up getting like 4 different little pieces. So I'll get this thing unwrapped and then I'll show you guys. Okay, so went and cleaned everything up. And now I think I'm about ready to show you guys the new stuff. So, like I said, there's technically 4. So there's one here, and I'll zoom in a minute. There's one in my elbow ditch, and then there's one up here at the front of my arm. Technically, you know, the ones on my elbow ditch and elbow are kind of one piece. They go together, so you can kind of count that as one, but really 4 basically. So let me go into them a little individually here. So first one we did was this axe here. This is the Madman Mars axe. You can actually see Mars's face here in the blade, which is really cool. Basically, I had this guy here, this Creature in Black Lagoon, from another artist. This was from Robbie Sanders. And then this Rob Slasher, had done these 2 Myers for me, the Savini Jason. And it kind of made this weird little triangular shape here in my arm that we needed to fill. So kind of playing around with ideas and realized that an axe would fit really well there, and he actually blended in the handle down through the other masks, which I just think is awesome. Next up is this Leslie Vernon and his sickle, scythe, whatever you want to call it, on my elbow ditch, and this one's a little hard to show off just because it's in an awkward place because it is like right there in the bend of my arm, as you can kind of see. So it may look a little distorted here on camera, but I really think it came out well. And the sickle was kind of the add-on. We had the mask, or he had the mask already drawn up when I got there, and then we were trying to fill some more gaps, so the sickle seemed like a perfect little piece to put right in there. And I will say, going back to the axe, this didn't really hurt much at all, except right at this very end, where I would kind of feel it, you know, in my wrist. This one definitely hurt, being right there in the ditch. I think really just the very extreme ends of it on either side were maybe a little easier, but everything right there in the middle was a bit tough. And then last but not least is Leatherface from part 2. And this one was really painful. This was the 3rd one of the day, or 4th one of the day. And I was pretty worn out by this point anyway. And then as he was getting in like towards the armpit, it was killing me. So that was not a fun one. I feel bad because I'm sure I was not the best client trying to sit still for this thing, but I am happy with how it came out. I think it was worth the pain. So those are my new additions. I think it's funny because I think when I showed off the tattoo before, my last like getting tattooed vlog, it was more dedicated or semi-dedicated. I had just gotten this one from him, and then my haunted mask there at the back. So since then we've added the other Myers, Savini Jason, Harry Jerry Warden, Victor Crowley, and these other ones I just got today. So slowly but surely filling out this arm and trying to tie everything together. But I will link his Instagram. He's Slasher Tattoos. He works out of 36 Black in Orlando, Florida right now. And then he is also a mask maker, mask painter, rehauler, all that kind of stuff at Stabbing Cabin Studios. He does freaking great work there. So yeah, if you want cool horror stuff, whether permanently in your skin or in a mask or something, Rob's definitely the guy to go to.
Wake up, sleepyheads. It's party time! Alright, that's an obscure reference. If you get that one, well, actually, you know what? If you don't get that one, or if you do, go check out the podcast I've been working on, Nocturnal Frequency. I'll put a link below. We just did a review of the 1986 movie Trick or Treat that has Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne in it. But yeah, I am up way earlier than I have been in quite a while, and for the second time in a row this weekend, I'm driving down to Orlando as of this recording, and I fully expect it to have changed by the time I actually get this edited and uploaded. Universal Orlando is doing a one weekend, basically replacement Halloween Horror Nights. So basically they're doing 2 haunted houses and putting up some Halloween decorations. Alright, so I'm not sure how much of anything I said earlier was, well, I guess you could hear it probably, but it probably wasn't visible. But anyway, so this thing is part of the general admission to the park this weekend, but it is just a test. So this weekend is the only time it's guaranteed as of right now, at least. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to miss out. So I'm here. I'm actually in the parking garage, or about to enter the parking garage. Ooh, now we're really here. Now we're in the parking garage. But yeah, I'm excited. I did see, it sounds like, I don't know what the reduced capacity of the park is right now, but apparently they hit it yesterday. So I did make sure I got here early. It's about a half hour, I think, before the park opens right now. So hopefully that lets me get through security and get up towards the gate right around the time they open. And my understanding, it's all like a virtual queue system. So once I'm actually, I guess, in the park, I can sign up for the virtual queue and get a space or a time to go back. I'm not really sure. I'm honestly a little, not concerned, but you know, I'm not really sure exactly what it is I'm doing right here. So we shall see. We shall see how this goes. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited to be back doing haunted house stuff. So there's nothing else left but to mask up and let's do this.
Alright, so it's the day after Halloween Horror Day, I guess. So I went on Sunday, September 20th, and as of this recording, I don't really intend to have this video out and available until about a week later. So a lot of things I say in this may end up being proven completely outdated by the time this actually gets posted. So I kind of apologize in advance. But my day started off with me screwing up somehow. I think I must have just flipped the numbers because I went to the park thinking it opened at 8 a.m., but it really didn't open until 9 a.m. I think it stayed open until 8 p.m., which is probably my confusion. So I woke up super early, got down there. I was in the parking garage by probably around 7:30. You have to go through a quick temperature scan before you get into the main area where the parking garages connect. And then they do bag check and, you know, metal detectors, all that fun stuff. And got out that pretty quick and easy. Went through City Walk, got to the front of Universal and kind of got in line. The lines leading into the park were all socially distanced, all spaced out pretty well. They had a lot of employees moving around, making sure people were where they needed to be, directing people who needed to buy tickets where they needed to go. And then the rest of us who had tickets, they just kind of, here you go. And like 45 minutes to an hour before the park opened, they started making announcements. First was just kind of a simple thing like, hey, we're opening at 9, and basically telling you that you could go and download the Universal app and use that to get a virtual queue place for the haunted houses as well as some of the other attractions throughout the day. And to do that, apparently you actually have to be on Universal property, either in the parking garage or City Walk or the parks themselves. You can't do it remotely from home or anything. So as it got a little closer, they had somebody else show up with a mic, and they were doing less super informational stuff and more just kind of like entertaining the crowds that had gathered, which was kind of nice. It was a good way to kill those last probably half hour, 15 minutes, somewhere in that range. I wasn't really paying that much attention, but it definitely helped keep things feeling like you weren't just sitting there staring at a wall. And they started letting people in a little bit early, I think 10 minutes or something before the park was supposed to open, which was nice. A lot of the things in the park were still closed once they let people in, but you could at least be inside the gates. I'm thankful that as the line just started moving, and I had gotten there early, so I was not too far back from the gates. It didn't take me long to get into the park, but somebody yelled out in excitement, "The virtual queues are open!" So I pulled out the app. I was able to book my times. Times were going quick right off the bat. So I got Bride of Frankenstein. I think it was for about 10:45 or something like that. And then I wasn't sure how long it would take to go through a house, because in the past, if you don't have a fast pass, the houses at Halloween Horror Nights can sometimes be a long wait. So I just booked the Tooth Fairy for late in the afternoon. I think that was about 2:30 in the afternoon 2:30. That's the perfect time for that house. But I booked it for then. So that gave me some time to kind of roam around the park and check out some other things. One thing I knew that was added for, I don't know if it's just for this Halloween Horror Nights thing or if it's kind of like an October thing they're doing, I assume it's sticking around a little longer, is what they call the Scarecrow Stalk. It is 13 scarecrows placed around the park, and at each one they have a little map pamphlet you could get, and I would show you mine, except it was in my pocket all day. It got incredibly wet from all the rain and the water rides I went on. So it is basically unusable at this point, so I apologize. I can't really show that. But you go find these 13 scarecrows, and you can get a stamp at each one, and I guess you get a bag of candy. I didn't do the stamps. I didn't care about the candy. I just wanted to go and check out all these scarecrows. And they were each kind of themed a little bit around the store that they were found at. So the first one was at the Universal Studios store, which is right when you walk in the park. This was a big, like, pumpkin-headed skeleton thing. Really cool looking. It was definitely a neat one. The only one I didn't get a still picture of, and I will say I'm probably going to have to slow down the footage I took in this video, because it looks like what felt like me getting good shots when I was actually at the park ended up being me being, like, the camera just like flailing all over the place, and a lot of it is way too fast to really get a good look at anything. So I'm gonna try slowing down the footage a little bit so that maybe it's a little more palatable. So since I had time to spare, I decided to go look at more of the scarecrows. The second one was at the SpongeBob store, and it was just like a skeleton pirate being hung up. I thought there was going to be some kind of automated system or even just a stamp handy to stamp your own pamphlet, but I guess you had to go up to the counter to get it stamped. The guy at the SpongeBob store was very weird about it. Like, he wouldn't do it. And I don't really get why. So I'm not really sure what that was about. I assume the idea of having people get it stamped at the register was to kind of be like, well, I'm already going to wait in line for the register. Might as well buy some stuff. I kind of assumed that's the idea. But whatever. I just decided like I said, I don't need the candy, obviously. So I was just gonna go and get photos and video. So when you walk in the park, if you take a right, which is usually the direction I go for Halloween Horror Nights, because it usually happens to have the scare zone I want to see the most on that side for whatever reason. The whole park is themed around different like areas, geographical areas more or less. So it's the Hollywood section kind of up in the front. That section I see every Halloween Horror Nights, usually during the day because I'm usually there, before sunset. So I'm used to seeing that strip, though I'm not used to seeing it with no theming. But at least that front section, like, I'm kind of used to seeing with theming. Once I got past that front section, back towards the kids area and where the Simpsons area is, it was weird. It's weird because now that I'm past the entrance to the park, or like the first section, I haven't seen this in daylight in like years. I'm almost here at night. The Simpsons area with nobody with chainsaws is actually really disappointing. And I will say, I'm glad Universal did this. I'm really happy that I got to have some level of a Halloween Horror Nights experience this year. But it was disappointing that they didn't add a little more Halloween decorations. I get why you wouldn't do scare zones because you are having your normal people going through the park during the day. You probably don't want to scare the crap out of them, so that you can't really avoid the scare zones. But a little more theming around the outside would have been cool. Even just to add some jack-o'-lanterns and stuff around would have made it kind of neat. And I wish they'd done a little more like that. The other thing I wish they'd done, I think a lot of people probably would feel this way, is they have the Mel's Drive-In diner that you can get food at. And Halloween Horror Nights, they always blank out some of the letters, so it says Mel's Die-In. It seems like a simple thing, especially during the day. It wouldn't have been super obvious that the lights were off to spell die. I don't know. To me, it would have been cool if that was themed out as well. But yeah, I just kind of went right through the Simpsons area. So the next one was at the Men in Black gear shop. This one was really cool. It was very alien looking. I think it really fit the theme, but it still was kind of a scarecrow look as opposed to just a skeleton like there was at the SpongeBob store. Then as I continue going around the park, there is the Harry Potter London section up at the top, and I figured I would just check that out, so I went back into the little, it's the Diagon Alley section. There's that Nocturnal alley that I didn't know existed the only other time I'd been there. So that's all, dark and creepy, so I figured it kind of fit with the Horror Nights vibe. And then they have a big old python looking animatronic in a cage in the back as well. Next stop on the Scarecrow stock was the custom gear shop for the Fast and Furious ride, and this thing looked like a punk, but I assume it was also family. Then, pretty much right across the way is the San Francisco Candy Factory in the San Francisco area of the park. I guess Fast and Furious is technically in that section. And that one had yet another pirate. One of two repeats that I saw that weren't just stereotypical scarecrow things. So it was another pirate, in a coffin. It was cool looking. But it is funny because it just mirrored the SpongeBob one pretty well. And then outside there is the Jaws hanging display you could take photos with. Not sure what this is doing here. I thought they blew this thing up. Then next I went to Sahara Traders, which is the mummy gift shop, and they already have some cool mummy stuff, like the big sarcophagus in there. And this scarecrow was a two-headed skeleton thing, mummy-ish thing. But I love that it has a cup of coffee next to it, because the ride queue for Mummy has Brendan Fraser complaining that he wants his cup of coffee. So it's actually really funny that they kind of incorporated that joke from the ride into the scarecrow prop. So next up was the Tribute Shop. This is the big official Halloween Horror Nights store. And then this year, they opened it weeks ago. And I think the idea is to basically make this, when they weren't going to do houses or wasn't clear they were going to do houses, this was going to be the replacement. They normally theme it, but they really went all out this year in theming. So they kind of just pushed things to the next level. The first room, I guess, is supposed to be like Dr. Frankenstein's lab. There's a bunch of beakers and electricity and big rotating windmill things. You see the monster on a slab and there's electrical flashes going off. It's covered with a cloth. You see electricity flashing across like it's about to come to life at any moment. Surrounded all this is tons of merch and stuff, but there's also a Moldorama machine in the corner. If you're unfamiliar with these, they're basically these big things. I used to see them at zoos and museums and stuff. Actually, the zoo I went to religiously as a child had tons of them throughout the park, and I always thought they were the coolest things. But basically, it's a big like die machine, so these two things come together and it inserts plastic into it, and you get a figure, little statue thing that just pops out at the end. So I got this guy, a little Frankenstein's monster. It's kind of cool looking. It's pretty generic, but it's neat. The bottom on the front says Frankenstein, and the back says Universal Studios. I don't think any of this is going to come out on camera, but trust me, it's there. The one thing I will note is that the bottom has like bumps on it, and I got two of these, and they both have imperfections on the bottom. And there's kind of imperfections all the way around. There's like some flashing on the seam line and stuff. Not a big deal, but the bottom I can see causing issues for people. It doesn't really stand up well, so I'm going to try to trim this with an X-Acto blade. It feels like it's really soft plastic, so it should be easy enough to do. But just so you know, the next section I think was supposed to be kind of Halloween Horror Nights itself themed, or around Jack the Clown, their returning icon character. This was supposed to be the 30th anniversary of Halloween Horror Nights. I guess technically it is, but a lot of people are calling it like 29.5 just because they don't want this lackluster year. I mean, regardless of what they do, it's going to be a little lackluster compared to an average Halloween Horror Nights. So people don't want to call this the 30th year, really, which I totally get. But this one is just decked out in pumpkins and kind of a carnival look, which is once again matches with Jack and all that stuff. There's a huge wall of jack-o'-lanterns, which looks just amazing. I think there was a tree in the middle. Now I'm trying to remember, with like a Jack standee kind of thing, mannequin. I missed this the first time I went through this room because there were a bunch of people congregated around it and I couldn't see it. There's another Moldorama machine in the corner up front by the giant jack-o'-lantern wall. And this one makes, fittingly enough, little jack-o'-lanterns. And this is based off the artwork, I guess, from the original Halloween Horror Nights. So you got the jack-o'-lantern face up front, it says Halloween Horror Nights across the base, and then Universal Studios on the back. This one's pretty cool as well. The bottom of that one's relatively flat. So I don't know why the machine spat out ones that were flatter on the bottom for those ones. I'm not sure. But both machines took cash and credit cards, but the credit card reader on this one was broken. So I asked one of the workers there, it's like, do you know if this thing will give me change? I assumed it didn't. And they're like, yeah, I think it just takes whatever money you put in it. So I asked if I could go get change. There's a cash register further in. And the worker was like super cool about it. She took me kind of a back way around over there. She dropped me off in the line for the cashier. It was like, I'll come back for you in a couple minutes to let you back through the wrong way because you're only supposed to move through the store in one direction. So I got my change and the worker let me back through, back in, got the thing. She double checked on me when I went to leave the room. It's like, oh, did you get them? I was like, yeah, cool. So like super nice, super helpful, really appreciate it. But if you are going, they are $6 a piece. Inexpensive for a theme park, probably expensive for a normal Moldorama type thing, but I would recommend having the cash, having a 5 and a 1 handy, just in case. But then once you leave that room, there's a split in the line. There's an attendant at that door. The one that helped me go get the cash, actually. But you can do two different things. You can go down this hallway and stay to the left, and it will just move you through, or you can go on the right, and there's a bakery. I skipped the bakery. Apparently they have a lot of cool themed, like, treats and stuff, which is neat. But the hallway is just kind of a narrow, like, more utility hallway, but they plastered the walls with all these different, like, old brochures from Halloween Horror, like pictures of them, but old Halloween Horror Night brochures and posters and stuff. So it's cool. It's like very much celebrating the 30th anniversary type thing. You go through this next room, besides being the bakery, it just kind of has some generic spooky stuff, like haunted house kind of things. Like haunted actual house, not a like themed haunted house Halloween Horror Nights thing. Generic, but you know, it was creepy enough and really was just there to have the bakery. There was also one of those like custom shirt things that they've done in the past, which I don't really get. It's like, I guess they just assumed those are shirts that are really low demand, so they're going to print them on command, or if it's just more fun to do it on command somehow. I don't know. I don't get why they're not just normal shirts, but I didn't really pay enough attention to give a verdict or really understand why it was what it was. But then you move through to the last bit and a piece that might as well be a house on its own, Beetlejuice. And it is fitting because Beetlejuice was supposed to be a house this year. I don't know for sure if the tribute store would have been the same regardless. It feels a little bit like they took the Beetlejuice house apart and rebuilt parts of it in the tribute store. But in the past they have done like a Ghostbusters themed tribute store while the Ghostbusters house was there, but there was much less theming. So I'm really leaning on the side that this was the house chopped up and thrown into the tribute store. But you go in, there's like all the green foam that's the diorama that Beetlejuice lives in. So they have like that egg crate, like sound dampening stuff, and that's all over these displays. They have like funeral wreaths and tombstones. There's flyers for Beetlejuice himself, like his bioexorcism flyers. They have his grave with the like neon Beetlejuice sign or light up Beetlejuice sign. Then you go around the corner, there is the stairway with the snake Beetlejuice coming down. There's also the Dante's Inferno Club or whatever, the strip club facade you can take your picture in front of. Next up, you see the Maitlands, I think is their name, like the dead version of them, the decaying version from the end, like floating up above you. And the checkout counters are themed like the afterlife bureaucracy. I forget what the name of the thing was. I haven't watched Beetlejuice in a minute here. But, it has like the now serving like a ridiculously large number and that kind of display, which is cool. It's really a neat way to theme the cash registers themselves. Then as you're leaving, you get the hallway with all the weirdly shaped doors. Like some are really tiny, some are big. You see glowing behind them. And then you get a little area where they have the woman's severed legs and then like a burnt up chair with the super long like placeholder number for when you're going to be served or whatever. And that's the last thing you see before you go back out. So that was a really cool tribute story this year. Highly recommend that just on its own. So I believe this was about the time when I went and did the Bride of Frankenstein house. Now, there's no filming in the houses, as always. And usually I kind of like supplement this with the teaser trailers Universal puts out or Scare Zone footage, which I have neither of this year. So unfortunately, I don't really have as much interesting visuals to show during these house breakdowns, but thankfully there's only 2 of them. So you don't have to stare at my face that much more than you normally would. Showed them my virtual queue thing, they scanned it, I went in. As I said, I wasn't sure what to expect in terms of length of line, but it moved really quickly. I think I went from the gate to the house in about 10 minutes. Not bad at all. The house itself only took like 5 minutes, but it's basically like a sequel to Bride of Frankenstein. You start by seeing like the castle crumbling afterwards. But then in an incredible change of heart, the bride is trying to save Frankenstein's monster. You see her trying to lift like a beam off of his like lifeless body, and that was interesting. It was one of the few times where there's not like a separation between you and the actors. The bride had a face mask on, like a generic, which was kind of weird, in the story, but obviously we know why. But she was up and far away. You were never going to be anywhere near 6 feet. You probably weren't even like 10 feet away from her, you were pretty far. And then as you go through, basically the plot seems to be that she is trying to resurrect Frankenstein's monster. You eventually see she is like draining blood, I guess, or life essence from other creatures. As things were explained to me going into this, I did watch some videos, so usually I try to go in spoiler free to these things, but I wanted to know what was going on and what to expect with the overall experience, so I did cheat a little this year. So people were saying to me that you basically walk into an area and have a show scene play out for you and then move on to the next. So I expected a lot more like go, stand in a room, watch something, and then be ushered into the next room. It still worked a lot like a standard Halloween Horror Nights haunted house. You were kind of constantly moving, unless something got backed up because somebody was like too scared or something. There were the employees that are almost normally in the houses to monitor, make sure people aren't doing things they're not supposed to. But this time they had it looked like green pool noodles that picked up the blacklight really well. And then they would like wave you on or like stop you with them just to give you a clear indication of what you're supposed to do. Honestly, I kind of like this. It made it a lot harder to accidentally try to make a wrong turn in the house, but it did make the workers very, very obvious within the houses, which I guess could be a detriment. But But yeah, so to me, it was more just constantly moving through, but you did get to spend a little more time in the scenes, I guess, than the normal conga line that you have at Halloween Horror Nights. But every other time you ran into actors, they were behind like a sheet of plastic, like a, clear plexiglass kind of thing. It looks like most of the masks were full head, like latex Halloween style masks as opposed to like prosthetics. And I would only assume that they have like a COVID mask on underneath it or something. But you see the bride trying to harness life from other things. You get this cool thing where there's like a bunch of test tube looking, like full body size test tube looking things, and like different Universal monsters are in them, so I guess she's draining the other monsters too. You even see Creature, which made me happy. And eventually the monster is resurrected, and I think that was how that ended. After that, I continued on with the Scarecrow stock. Went to Rosie's Irish shop. There was like a leprechaun looking Scarecrow there. It was kind of cool. Then to the film vault, where they had yet another mummy, a very different looking mummy than there was in the Mummy Ride store, but still another mummy, the other repeat here. Then the supply vault, which was the Transformer store. This one, I guess, was trying to be a Transformer, but it really just looked like a bunch of car parts stuck together. It would have worked just as well over at the Fast and Furious one, I feel like, as it did in Transformers, but it was our Transformers Scarecrow. And I guess it's not like it's supposed to be a Transformer that looks like a Scarecrow or whatever. It's, it's a Scarecrow themed around Transformers. It works. It does its job. I'm just being overly harsh about it. The one I really did like is one I wouldn't have expected to really like, the Shrek at Shrek's Ye Olde Souvenir Shop. Thankfully, they were not blasting All-Star out of the radio in there, because they were playing like stereotypical songs everywhere else for the themed store, so I was kind of worried. But this one is another like pumpkin-headed Scarecrow, which to me is just standard Scarecrow look, but it used the keep out sign as the arms kind of thing. So I was like, that actually really worked, because that is picking something from Shrek to put in here, but it still looks creepy and has a good look to it. So I actually really appreciated that one. Then there was the Minion store, super silly stuff. This one I didn't get a good look at because the line for checkout was going basically across the entrance to the store, and the Scarecrow is right in the entrance. So it was just kind of a mess. I assume the line's not really supposed to go that direction, but that's what was happening. It wasn't good. But this was kind of lame looking. It looked like a ringleader carnival guy, and like a pumpkin, like not on its head, but like in its arm. It was what it was. Probably my least favorite Scarecrow of all 13. Then I went to the Skeleton Bar. This is in Cafe La Bamba, and they basically transformed this thing. I've never been in it before. I think I heard somebody say it's not normally open. I'm not really sure about that. But they added, pumpkins and stuff to the facade outside, and you get inside, there's like a skeleton walkthrough experience after you get your food. So I got the chicken tandoori skewers. They weren't very good. They were pretty dry, and I didn't like the stuff it came with. But there were some cool visuals inside. There's also an area to get some drinks. I just really didn't feel like getting alcohol because it was still, I think, the morning at this point. But got my food after going through the skeleton stuff. And there's like a little table area outside. So it was nice to actually be able to sit down, and it's a safe, everything's distanced, so you can take your mask off to eat and all that fun stuff. I should also mention it was raining lightly the entire morning, so it was just a constant state of just barely drizzling, which kept temperatures down nicely. And then I sat under the umbrella, and the way it was shaped, I think there might have been a little rip in it or something, but it just had a stream of water coming down on me. So not the best table choice on my part, but I didn't spend a lot of time there anyway, so I was done pretty quickly. I believe either before or after this, I went over to E.T. Haven't done that ride in a while. I was trying to do a ride that I haven't done at Halloween Horror Nights, and usually E.T.'s line is the exit for one of the houses, so it's not available. I will say, backtracking to Bride, as I was waiting at the end of the house to get in, there was the exit to the house right there, and you could smell that beautiful Halloween Horror Nights smell, which I think is fake fog and paint and stuff like that. It's probably all chemicals you really shouldn't be enjoying the smell of. But I love that smell, and I kind of forgot that E.T. smells similar, but not quite. It's just kind of a weird, semi-musty smell in there as well. Line wasn't bad. It was marked off pretty well. The lines going into Bride, I'm backtracking to Bride a lot because now I keep thinking of other things. There's the normal kind of park area out front where they have a big out and backs for the lines. They actually separated those so that there was almost a row in between the rows so that you could both front and back distance and side to side distance. They were actually very conscious about all that. The ET ride, because it's a permanent fixture, they set the markers so that you're offset to the people in the line next to you if they're on their marker. So if you're here, ow, it hurts to bend my arm after that tattoo. If you're here, the group in front of you might be here, and then the group on the next row over might be here. So it's still like a 6 foot, aside this triangle pieces here. So I thought that was smart. They did a good job with that. The queue still plays the same thing it always plays, where it's the making of ET stuff, which is cool, but they took out the other section. You go in the doors initially and they play like this thing from Steven Spielberg talking about the plot of the ride, and then they let you through. They skipped that part for obvious reasons, basically hurting people in a very small area, so it makes sense you wouldn't do that. But I wish they would play that piece in with the making of stuff outside, just because, I've done the ride before, I know what the story is and all that stuff, but if you're on the ride, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you end up on like E.T.'s planet and there's all these like weird things going on, so I kind of wish they would have kept the story mixed in as well. One of the other things I wanted to do was the horror makeup effects show that they have. I haven't seen that in years. And the app, it showed that the times were pretty late in the day. And then as I went around the corner, leaving ET, I believe, I saw that there was a show like coming up in like 15 minutes that wasn't on the app when I looked. So I got in line for that. As you go into the theater, and once again, you're spaced out multiple seats apart from the people next to you, and then every other row is empty, so it's pretty limited capacity. But they had an actor dressed as Beetlejuice on the stage, basically doing like insult comedy on people beforehand. So that was kind of fun.
It's my job to gross you out, freak you out, and weird you out. Successful. So come right over here for our arm counter. It's the arm Kia. We have legs, arms, all that good stuff. You can put them together. Over the top.
Oh, wow, she really is from Tennessee.
Okay.
When he's done, they bring in the show. Like I said, I saw the show years ago. It's basically still the same show, except it seems like, from talking to a friend of mine, that they change out the movie that they're referencing for their examples as things go on. So I guess when he went previously, they were talking a lot about the remake of The Wolfman, because it was the most recent Universal Monsters movie. Here they were talking a lot about the remake of The Mummy, the Tom Cruise Mummy. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't like, oh my god, this whole thing's about the mummy. It was much better than that. But it was really more of a comedy show than anything to teach you about makeup effects. But it was fun. The exit to the makeup show is I guess it's called the Five and Dime is the name of the store. Last year when I went, it was basically the Universal Monster store. It had giant statues of the Universal Monsters, tons and tons of cool stuff. They still had some of that, but I guess it shares not only being the exit to the makeup show, but also being the exit to the Bourne Identity show. So now the one side of it is pretty much all Bourne Identity kind of stuff. So it's not quite as pure horror as it used to be, which is a bummer. But it was very crowded in there. I did get a photo of the scarecrow there. It was like a Frankenstein holding a pumpkin. And I took a little extra B-roll there as well. Then I backtracked towards the front of the park, where I'd missed one of the scarecrows at the Silver Screens Collectibles. This was supposed to be, I guess, kind of like a snake woman. I thought it was Greta Gremlin from Gremlins 2. And it kind of was like a mermaid where the upper body is like human, the bottom body is snake. I believe it was at this point I went and I did the Men in Black ride because I still had some time before my time for Tooth Fairy. And then I went back to the tribute store again to get the other jack-o'-lantern, that whole story I told earlier. When I went to Tooth Fairy, I had my pass ready, and it looks like they might have just been letting people on because I showed them the thing, but they just kind of waved me through. They didn't scan it. And I watched some videos afterwards from other people who went Saturday, and apparently they were doing this there at the end of the day as well, was just kind of opening up the lines. But I walked pretty much right onto that one. It was a very short wait. I didn't get a timer on it, but it was pretty short. I will say the people in front of me were kind of driving me nuts because they would constantly pull their masks down, and then when they were told they needed to wear it, they would pull it up until they were out of those people's sight, and then they would pull it back down again. I will say this is an exception to the rule at Universal Studios. The overwhelming majority of people were very good about the mask thing. I was really impressed, actually, because I feel if I go into Home Depot on the weekend, I see more people wearing it around their chin or wearing it below their nose. This was pretty good, I will say. It's a low bar. It's a low bar. But they get in, and they are pulsing people through going in, and you start off, and there's like storybook kind of like pages above you, It's basically telling the story of like what happens if you refuse to give the tooth fairy your tooth. It's this kid who doesn't want to give up his lost tooth. The first scene is basically all animated. It's kind of reminding me of the Babadook a little bit. More storybook stuff, more animated stuff. And as I was waiting for the first group to go through the first real scene, I see the one girl freaking out and basically trying to drag her friends backwards out of the room, and the attendant there was kind of just trying to like get him to go. I go through, it's just like a monster in a bedroom. It wasn't really that scary. Once again, all these scare actors are behind plexiglass. This one had a lot where it wasn't just like a flat sheet, it was like a curved thing around them. So I don't know if it was plexiglass or like a shower curtain kind of deal. But that on its own was kind of interesting because you could tell they could only really have so much space. I'm sure it's kind of a pain for the people who are stuck in these little tubes. But yeah, after a couple scenes, to be quite honest, because of the distractions in front of me, I didn't really capture as much of the story as I wish I had. You know, I was dumb and I didn't realize I probably could have just gone back through again afterwards. But at one point, one of the attendants stopped me and was just like, yeah, maybe give them a little extra social distance. So she kind of like held me back for a few minutes and let them get further in the house. And by the time I was leaving the house, they were not that far ahead of me, but gave them a pretty good head start. But I guess basically the Tooth Fairy is like mutilating people around this old Victorian mansion because she can't get a tooth, and then like at the end turns the kid into some kind of Tooth Fairy monster. They did a lot of things where there were either like the tubes with actors in them, especially some where it's like, I wonder if they had like a film or something over the top so that you wouldn't see them until it was backlit, because I felt like there were some where they just kind of appeared within the things. They also kind of had misdirect ones, so it's almost like they knew. I don't know, maybe it was just understaffed because they couldn't have a lot of people in there. But there was some where it almost felt like they knew they had to like misdirect people. So there'd be like a tube of plastic or a sheet of plastic, and you're expecting the scare to come from there, and then there's one that's more in the dark on the other side where they pop out of. So they still got some effective scares, and it was decent. So after that, I went back to the Universal store at the front of the park. I got a Halloween Horror Nights shirt that I've been eyeing. And then I decided, since the ticket I got is, they were doing a special for Florida residents where you could pay for a day and then like a little extra and then come back anytime before the end of the year or like Christmas or something like that. So I got that because I figured it'd be worth a few extra bucks just to have the opportunity. And I decided to go over to Islands of Adventure because I haven't been there in equally as long, and because Halloween Horror Nights isn't over there anymore, I've really had no excuse to go. I will say it's an odd like night and day difference between Universal and Islands of Adventure. Partly I think because of Halloween Horror Nights. So Halloween Horror Nights is full of like metal punk goth people like everywhere. It was kind of funny. And then I feel like Islands of Adventure with all the people who don't like Halloween. It's kind of what it felt like. As I was leaving, I didn't spend a lot of time there, but as I was leaving, I saw more people who seemed to have gone from one park to the other, but it was just kind of funny for a little bit. Islands of Adventure also just doesn't seem like it's built for social distancing. Everything's a lot more narrow in there, so it's harder to get around groups of people, and I was getting a lot of people who would like walk into a space and then stop in the middle of a road and basically block areas. This happened at Universal a few times as well. There's like areas where it's already like a natural bottleneck. People would stop at that bottleneck with no reason to stop, like nothing blocking them from just moving and getting over to the side of the road or something. So it did make it a little like annoying to get through certain places. But I went and I did the King Kong ride, mostly because I love King Kong and I haven't had a chance to do that one. It was okay. It's a 3D glasses thing. At first I thought my glasses were bad because, you know, they have to sanitize the glasses every time. And I guess the lenses were super smudged from the sanitizing. I didn't realize it, so when I got on, like, everything was blurry, and I took them off and cleaned them, and I could actually see some of the animatronics, especially at the beginning. And it's more or less like they just shake the car, and you watch, like, a 3D movie on either side of you of Kong fighting some stuff. It wasn't great. At the end, you do see a full life-size thing of Kong. It's okay. It's all the Peter Jackson-themed one. The coolest thing in the queue, there was one of those, like, bloodworm kind of things. Giant bloodworms in a box. Like, that was freaking amazing. And then because that was really unsatisfying, I decided to do the Jurassic Park Rapids ride. And that one's definitely showing its age. They're working on a Jurassic World coaster. So I'm thinking that once that's done, maybe they'll shut the Rapids down for a little bit and do some refurbishment because it sorely seems to need it. The Ultrasaur, the first dinosaur you see when you go in, its neck just looks broken. You can see all the like tubing inside that's giving it structure. The head is like permanently like tilted to the side when it's moving up and down. So it looks like it's like dying. And it seems to bend in one spot as opposed to like multiple bends that would give it a more organic look. And you can see at all the joints that are clearly visible, just like patching all around them. The thing's definitely worn out. I mean, it's in the water, it's constantly moving, but I think is having a hard life. And then later on, there was a raptor that wasn't moving at all, and there was the Tyrannosaurus at the end has no lower teeth. It was weird looking, but it was still okay. I do like in the Jurassic Park area, they have announcements playing all over about like, make sure you wear the mask over your mouth and nose, all that stuff. Everywhere else I went in the park, it was in like a British accent, and I feel like that was like, they did it for Harry Potter World, and they were just like, oh, we'll just use that for everywhere. But in the Jurassic Park area, they actually were like, Mr. Hammond requests to all guests. Like, I thought it was kind of funny. They're like building it into the lore of the area, which kind of fit. So that was pretty much it. I took off after that, went home. What do I do normally at this point? I rank the houses. So Bride of Frankenstein, Tooth Fairy, 1 and 2. Rumor is at this point that they will probably be doing this more. I don't know if it's just going to be a weekend thing or if they're going to expand it to other days of the week. I'm hoping they expand it to other days of the week to maybe help with crowds, because I did hear it was problematic for some people to get the virtual queue times for the houses. I'm kind of wondering, the rumor I heard was that every 2 weeks they're going to be adding 2 more houses, which would make sense because at least that gives you a little time to like make sure you're not getting an influx of people saying that they're sick and they were at Universal 2 weeks ago. And granted, the park's been open for a few months now, but still I'm assuming they're probably trying to make sure of that, make sure some of the other things, they probably have to prep the other houses if they have them ready to have, the COVID safe stuff in them. So a lot of the information I've given in this, it may be useless or it may be very useful in a couple weeks, but we will see what Universal says and does. I'm glad I got to experience it. I really didn't want to risk not being able to do it if it is only this one weekend, but I really doubt that's going to be the case. I think it is going to expand, and I really do hope it does. I hope they expand some of the theming throughout the park as well, just to give it an overall more Halloween feel. And maybe that will happen more towards October. Who knows? But overall, it was a fun time and a good way to kick off the Halloween season this year.